The aim of our section, which is recording in fashion, inventorying as a method, is to explore the method of inventorying in connection to the 1966 Givenchy dress worn by Audrey Hepburn. And initially, this method is now seen as something very rigid. So when we were doing our research, we realized that in the beginning, inventorying was a more creative practice. So our aim during this project was to actually find a connection between the rigidness of the inventorying method right now and then the creative process that from like how it actually started. So we did that through exploring the inventorying method that they use at Galliera and then adding in the relationship between Givenchy and Audrey.
We have two sides to our grid. The first side consists of a wallpaper, which shows images that we took throughout our research process. We then have two screens. The first screen shows the inventory book that belongs to Galliera. The second screen shows the Givenchy Audrey Hepburn dress, close-ups of the dress. Then we have a catalogue of an exhibition that took place at Galliera. When you go to the other side of the grid, we have an Elle magazine that has Audrey Hepburn on the front of it. Then we have a document compiled of articles that wrote about the relationship between Audrey Hepburn and Hubert Givenchy. We then have a poem about inventorying. It is written in French, compiled with, it's overlaid with an image of Audrey Hepburn wearing the dress.
The aim of our section is to create a dialogue between the discourses of collecting through the analysis of a Comme des Garçons dress from the 2012 Spring-Summer collection, White Drama collection, and through our study of this object, we learn about the collecting practices of Palais Galliera, and through all of those documents that we collect and analyze, we understand how the designer herself, Rei Kawakubo, meant for her dress to be consumed and meant for the museum to collect. And through these discourses, we see the relationship between the museum, the art of collecting, and the creation of a garment.
So how we displayed collecting is on one side we showed books and academic sources that talked about collecting, and we also used historical items such as guides and catalogs. And on the other side we had items pertaining or sources pertaining to Comme des Garçons. So we used magazines, we used interviews that talking with curators from the Palais Galliera, and we also had articles from the media about the Comme des Garçons dress all on one side, just to show collecting in its process, the process of collecting.
The aim of our section, Exhibiting an Empress, is to give the viewer a behind-the-scenes look at everything that goes into the work behind an exhibition. So our grid is divided into two parts. The first part of the grid deals with all of the physical practices behind exhibiting. And then the second part is all of the historical context that goes into the garment that we're displaying, the day dress of Josephine Bonaparte from 1806.
The aim of our part of the exhibition, which is named Preservation, Conservation, Magic and Science, is to explore two sides of the grid. As you can see, the one is named Magic and the other is named Science. Magic could be seen as conserving memory, and science could be seen as the practice of a scientific act of conserving. What we're trying to show is a way to mediate between those two practices, which every museum has to do when it decides to preserve or conserve an object itself. So what you see is an actual mediation and one part of the story of conservation.
The construction of our section, conservation, is made up of a two-sided grid which explores the two ideas of magic and science. So the magic side shows tactile, us communicating with our object through the exploration of different practices on how to hold the material, on how to hang the material, and this is shown through objects that the viewer can interact with. And on the other side, we showed science, in which we looked at different discourses by different leading conservationists in the world that look at contemporary fashion conservation, so synthetic materials, and then depictions of our object in the media before it was placed into the museum setting.
Wow, there were a lot of challenges. Naturally, when you work as a collective, it's a gathering of individuals, so everyone has a different opinion. So the biggest challenge is always to mediate between each idea. But thank God we had each other, and we were able to communicate as best as possible. So we can put that aside. But what I think is the biggest thing to overcome is to narrow down what you're trying to say as a group as well. As what we're discussing is based on Aby Warburg's atlas, so it's taking mainly two-dimensional objects and trying to make it as clear and precise as possible to your viewer. Luckily, we have one another and our ideas that we were able to narrow down, and we had our professors to help us as well.
What really helped us overcome the challenges in fashion conservation of contemporary fashion and the lack of the discourse was our workshop at Galleria Depot, working with one of their conservation atelier members, Anastasia. We really workshopped ideas on how to hang the material, so we got to do our own sketches, our own mock-ups, and think creatively, which was really nice.
The most difficult part about the overall process was finding sources that really spoke to inventorying as a method. We started with a huge range of different sources that we could use, and it was really, the difficult part was narrowing it down and deciding what really spoke to inventorying as a method, not only as a systematic method, but as a creative one as well.
Our professors helped us overcome the most difficult part of this project because there was a lot of information we found and a lot that we wanted to add, and sometimes it was overwhelming to see where we were going, but with each feedback session it kind of became more and more clear, so they played a crucial role in us coming up with what we have right now.
The most challenging part of creating this exhibition was dealing with the physicality of it, because in certain parts we didn't have access to the mannequins in order to create a mock-up, so making extra meetings with various members of the faculty in order to bring this exhibition to life really helped.
The most difficult part for our section's installation design was pretty much figuring out how the items and documentations and the whole setup would be interacted with by visitors. It had to be practical, and it was difficult to figure out how through digital mock-ups, through drawings, how things would look to scale in real life in the end.
So to overcome our challenges in our group, like looking at how to scale things, we got the actual physical items and we measured them out, and we put those exact measurements onto our grid, and we pretty much went from there. And we were also talking to other classmates about how they set up their exhibition, and basically we eventually figured out how to lay out everything and get everything to actually communicate with each other and like bring out what we were trying to say about collecting.
The most exciting part about the overall curatorial experience was definitely having access to the archives of Galleria, of such an amazing museum. We really had access to their resources, their knowledge, their archives, which really enabled us to make this the best experience and really use that knowledge to our advantage, as well as the resources in the archives.
I think that what we all learned professionally in this project is to just work better in teams, because we all come from very different backgrounds, and we have to put all of our strengths together, and we all had very different ideas, and at times we had to learn how to connect all of those ideas. But I think that the final result has been amazing, and it really feels like a team project. It doesn't feel as like someone apported more than someone else. And yeah, I think it was just a process of learning how to bring everyone's strengths together.
The most exciting part of our curatorial experience was getting to go to the Galleria Depot archives and interacting one-on-one with the objects themselves and seeing what makes up a museum full of fashion.
It's a big learning process. If we look at it as a literature review, you have exhibitions that discuss dress or fashion and exhibit fashion or dress or fashion. And you have other exhibitions that show the effect of it on society. What we learned, and my section learned a lot, is mainly the anatomy, what's behind it, what communicates its actual presence in a sense. So yes, it was a learning process about this. And as you work, you always have to tweak and twist stuff in order to narrow down what you're trying to say. So it's not only, in quotations, educating the crowd, it's learning yourself, it's educating yourself.
The most exciting part in curating this exhibition was to have access to all of the resources in the museum's depot. For instance, we had the opportunity to do mannequinage on the dress itself and to watch that process behind the scenes. Definitely in terms of professional achievement, we learned how to be extremely adaptable in creating this exhibition because we had to do a lot of changes in order to make this the best exhibition.
The most exciting part of this curatorial experience for me was to come up with an interpretation for all of our documentations, starting with our case study of the Comme des Garçons dress from the 2012 White Drama collection. There's a lot of interpretations to take when it comes to analyzing the collecting practices, specifically with that garment. But in the end, when we decided our interpretation, it all came together and we decided how to take our interpretation from there. And I think that was the most exciting part, the research process.
So what I learned through this exhibition experience is the importance of communication with my group members and being available to work on the project and bringing and doing all different parts of the exhibition to bring it all together and understanding what each part is through the eyes of my group member. So we all understand what's going on. And I think also as a group, for my group, it was, or what we learned was to have good communication, not only with ourselves, but with everyone that we worked with like those who were giving us sources and our teachers, and like taking all their criticisms or things that they're providing to us and learning how to take it and use it put it into our exhibition so that everything comes out exactly the way that we want. And in terms of our class in general, we learned that communication, I think, is key to making this whole exhibition a success.